Hello and welcome to another great session at Devtoberfest. And today we're going to talk about from insights to action, achieve process excellence by combining process mining, task mining, and automation. My name is Kevin Riedelsheimer. I'm an SAP developer advocate in the developer relations team, and I'm very happy to be joined by our three guests, Evgeny Gorbanov, who is a senior product manager at SAP, responsible for SAP Build. Manuel Teckel, who's also working for SAP, and he's a director of product management at SAP Signavio. And a special thanks for joining Piotr Wisniewski, who is a pre-sales consultant at KYP.ai. And I'm very excited to this session, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Evgeny, now.
Thank you, Kevin, and yeah, glad to be here. So, with that, let me share my screen, and you should be able to see it now, right? With that,
Yes.
let's get started, right? So today we are very excited to talk to you about an interesting topic that is close to many of our customers, right? And that we hope you will benefit from learning more about, also from the technical side of how do we go from insights, namely process insights, task insights, to actually action, right? So say we have a lot of processes within the enterprise, within the organization, and then we want to understand how do they work? Are they efficient enough? Can we improve them? What can we do to improve them? Where do these processes potentially stuck? And maybe we can also automate them. So maybe we can really let our employees focus on more intelligent or more high value or more complex scenarios, and then let this potential stops or delays throughout the process be handled with automation, right? And today we will talk exactly about this. So how do we actually unlock these insights for us? How do we understand that deeper? How do we understand the individual potential steps or tasks where we have these potential issues, which makes our processes not running as we would like them to? And then how do we actually improve that? How do we automate it? So together with Manuel and Piotr, we will take you through a short presentation, and then after that we'll go to the longer demo, which hopefully would really be clear and transparent for you. Throughout the session, feel free to leave any questions, obviously, in the Q&A tool, and we will allocate some time towards the end to address them. So before we go into the concrete scenarios and into the actual technicality, we wanted to start with a big picture, right? So what is it that we're talking about today? Yeah, so at SAP, we have various systems, various solutions, right? Obviously, many of you should be familiar with the solutions such as S/4HANA or SuccessFactors or Ariba, basically addressing various needs of enterprise, be it finance, HR, procurement, or etc. However, on top of this, it's obviously very important for us to be able to address the potential extensions to improve the integration also towards non-SAP systems potentially, right? And then actually understand, hey, what do we have inside there, right? And for that, we have a set of solutions that you can see in this circle that allows us to look holistically into the areas of process improvement, process analysis, automation, and integration. So what's also important is that it's not only limited to SAP solutions, and we're very glad to have Piotr with us from KYP.ai, our partner. So we are obviously very open to collaborate with partners, and we're very interested in having this joint partner scenarios, which really add additional value on top, right? So because KYP.ai, and you will hear it firsthand from Piotr very soon, is focusing on the task mining specifically, and we'll explain you what that is in just a few minutes, right? And this way, by combining SAP and also ecosystem tools, we can go from really just serving the core extensibility needs and core integration and process analysis needs to really also taking it to the next level and being AI first ready, right? Because we are not talking about it today a lot, but I think you saw that we have some sessions, say, related to the Joule Studio, to the agents, right? And then we also obviously want for you to see that it's really going beyond that and goes to the AI readiness level as well, right? From the standard and classical extensions. So let's now start with the individual components that you saw on the slide, right? So we're not really going deep with the names. Obviously, it's more important for us to understand what is the functionality that we have here, right? And then if we start with SAP Build, this is the tool that allows you to create applications, workflows, automations slash RPA bots, business sites like workspaces for the employees using visual tools. So with that, you can either benefit from drag and drop creation or now generative AI driven creation of various artifacts. As you can see on the screen in the small video, we have created a process flow with a form, that you can see now the individual steps. So everything is visual. Everything can be also combined and updated. And on top of that, we also have actually the pre-built content that allows you to really benefit from also defined and already existing packages that can be again tailored to various systems and that are already tailored, say, to certain needs and to certain tasks that you want to run across the enterprise. Yeah, and then on top of this, we also have obviously integration capabilities, right? Allowing us to integrate through APIs, also through the UI-based level when needed with different systems. And obviously, we can integrate with partner solutions such as KYP.ai for more complex scenarios, including also an involving task mining. And last but not the least, I have not really shown it on the video, but we have not only AI-based generation of artifacts, but also we have what we call recommendations, say for the approval. We have data extraction capabilities that we are not really having in detail as a demo as part of the session, but obviously happy to also address some related questions to that if you have any. So, and with that, so we see that SAP Build is a tool that helps us to create various actionable artifacts. And first of all, what is relevant for today, automations, being workflows or RPA bots, allowing us to address various process inefficiencies and allowing us to make this actionable and executable. So how do we actually unlock it? With that, I would like to pass it to Manuel to really walk us through this part.
Yeah, perfect. And thank you, Evgeny, and also welcome from my side. Happy to be here to host this session. So next to SAP Build, we also have SAP Signavio as part of the enterprise automation framework. And the SAP Signavio Process Transformation Suite consists of multiple products, right? And they help you to globally understand, improve, and transform business processes fast and at scale, right? It brings together advanced technologies like process mining, process management, process modeling, actionable recommendations, value accelerator content, benchmarks, and many more stuff. And you will also see that in the demo in a second. The focus today lays on the process analysis part, right? To understand how processes run across multiple SAP and non-SAP systems. And you can also see this in the small visual on the slide, right? And this enables you to assess and compare the process performance and translate the insights into real actions. And talking about actionability, there you can use SAP Build, for instance, to run corrective actions, like out of the process insights, you want to unblock sales orders because you investigated they are stuck somewhere, or you can autonomously automate an complete end-to-end process using SAP Build. So SAP Signavio analyzes events happening in the enterprise systems, right, which are connected to our process mining tools. And we do this via database changes, logs, and traces, which are made available via event logs, right? But what we typically don't see with this technology is what's happening on the user level. So what about all the activities and tasks outside of the enterprise systems, like Excel, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, right? And that's exactly where our partner KYP.ai comes into play, right? And Piotr, please introduce us to the capabilities of this platform.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Evgeny. Hello, welcome. So KYP.ai captures the end-to-end digital interactions from users. It works across user activities on desktop and web applications that were being mentioned. We, as a platform, we provide holistic view on how work is performed across the teams, regardless of the tool and the process in scope. We help users understand, we help business users understand work reality. So we claim we uncover true complexity of the interactions that humans have with the system. And obviously we help identify where the time is being spent, what tools are used, how workflows would work. We help with improvements as well, saying that the platform surfaces the optimization candidates, something to be transformed, when something can be measured, we can assess the business impact, we can provide the ROI potential and establish the baseline on where the productivity can be improved. The platform would bridge a gap between the visibility and the execution. We can say that we provide we can help provide the measurements to turn the digital activities into actionable intelligence. And now I'd like to explain how the process mining and task mining can work together from that perspective. So this view can be split in, let's say, two parts. There is a system perspective on the top and there is a user perspective on the bottom. System perspective is everything. So the top layer is everything that stands for the end-to-end process. For example, claims processing, as we will go through today. Each stage is a logical business step. So someone does submit a claim, reviews, investigate, and so on. There are steps to be taken in a process, and it is very good view, or it is very good model to govern and check the compliance of a process. But it's lacking the people effect, how people would execute on those steps. So what we provide is the user perspective on the bottom. Each of those steps would represent the reality of work, how employees actually perform those tasks across all the applications. We can say that we capture clicks, switches, manual actions, any interaction which users have, which actually does represent the true execution path. Then how that might work as a framework on the next slide is that there is a view which is representing a closed loop. This is what we like to call, this is a transformation cycle. So something which helps empower all the three platforms which we will show today. There is how we can work together as a team. We would like to connect the data-driven insights that both platforms can provide and help measure the impact, basically creating the continuous improvement pipeline. So first, there is a full reality, right? We capture, let's say, we capture 100% of data across people, processes, and technologies. We have access to the logs from the process and the system in real time, seeing what are the activities that users perform. There are insights which can help us understand and find some recommendations. So this data is moved and transitioned into the actionable insights for all people, process, and technology. We can, at this stage, we can already know, the platform is able to identify where are the inefficiencies and what the improvement cost might be. Then we can see how this change can be managed. The implementation can be done via number of tools, which in that case, the great example would be the SAP Build. And with those impacts, we can measure the results. We can measure and validate whatever we did implement, how this one is reflected, how it is adopted, what we managed to accomplish. So yes, this is an ongoing exercise from insights to action, as the title says, and it happens continuously at the enterprise level.
And I think, thank you, Piotr, for bringing that together, right? I hope it provides a more clear picture now, right? Because these terms, when we hear potentially process mining, task mining, it's very important that we understand the difference between the two. And we will also elaborate on that later in the demo. So with that, let me actually go to the next slide. And what we would like to show you today and what we take as a baseline, you already saw this briefly on the sequence of steps, right? So we would like to take the claims processing, which is a common business scenario and business need, as a baseline for the demo today. Obviously, it can be different scenarios in different areas, and maybe you already can think of some that are relevant for your organization and for your company. However, today we have selected the claims processing scenario, and normally all of us sometimes face this flow or the need to go through this flow. So firstly, a customer, or maybe we sometimes submit a claim after experiencing loss or a covered event. For example, I got my luggage delayed once by the airline, and then I needed to file this claim, right? Then the claim is received via various channels. It can be online, it can be email, and then it's captured in the company system. An initial review checks the completeness of the claim, if it's clear, if it's eligible, and maybe we need some supporting documentation that we can request as well. If valid, if all proven, then the claim is assigned to the processor, and then this processor assesses the claim value. And once the processor approves it after the whole validation, then the payout is processed and finalized, right? So looks quite simple. However, obviously, there are certain loose ends throughout this scenario that we will also now uncover as we proceed. So in order to proceed, and what you will see in the demo today, right? So obviously, we will start with process analysis and process modeling capabilities of SAP Signavio. There is an important other part of the portfolio that I think we should speak of is the process modeling part, allowing you to create the BPMN models or also providing you with predefined best practice content, BPMN models for different systems. Say, again, for S/4HANA that we are using today as a target system of record. So process modeling allows us to define the diagrams, so define the actual steps, define the model of how the process should evolve. And in this case, we can show how the claim process should work. So what is the process as it should be? Then the process mining gives us visibility into how claims process truly work, right? Is it really the same amount of steps, or where do we have some issues? And we can analyze the system logs, as Manuel pointed out before, uncover the bottlenecks and inefficiencies. We can look into the variants and then show the non-compliant variants where we have, say, additional steps or not needed steps. And this helps us to identify the needed improvements. So that is, you remember, the first level from this diagram. Now, what we want to do next is we want to see how users actually perform their daily tasks. And that is something we can do with the task mining, with KYP.ai, right? So we can analyze what the user is doing on the computer, and then we can see that, hey, there is a manual step that the person is taking longer than expected. So basically some repetitive steps that slow us down in order to provide the handling faster. And this shows us exactly and very individually, tactically, I would say, which tasks are the best candidates for improvement or automation. And lastly, with process automation, with SAP Build, we can actually define the process flow that we will use to streamline and to eliminate these repetitive activities that we identified in the previous steps. And for that, we can use our development environment, so either low code, no code, or AI generated that we will see in the demo, in order to actually define the flow that we want to automate and avoid then manual activities for this particular set of steps. Yeah. And actually, what we will also show you today, we spoke about Joule agents, right? We spoke about we hinted at Joule, right? So what is important is part of SAP Build portfolio is a Joule Studio, and that is a tool allowing you to create skills and going forward agents for Joule, which is SAP's generative AI copilot, which you can access through various tools, right? So say you can directly start a chat, a conversation using your workspace, or being in S/4HANA, being in SuccessFactors, and then and etc. And then you can just ask using natural language, like all of us do, with different tools, with different generative AI tools, and then the system will return you an answer also in the format of a free text. Yeah, so it can also point you to the specific item in the system. So what we will do also in the demo today is we will not only create a process to define the automation flow, to address the issue, but also we will see how we can deploy this process to be used and to be executable through Joule by giving the text prompt and a request to process the claim. And what's also very important is that, you know, it doesn't stop here. So it's not a one-time thing, it's a continuous improvement loop. So after that, we can keep looking for how the process now performs. Do we have some improvements? And maybe we need to do further adjustments and further fine-tuning as we go. But it's important to see that we keep it consistent and we keep it harmonized. So it's always very important to keep proving the results. After you improve them, you basically see already some KPIs being changed directly in Signavio, and that is also part of the demo that we will show now. With that, enough of the slides, right? I think we need to jump into the demo flow. And with that, I will pass it now over to Manuel. And Manuel, feel free to take over the screen sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Evgeny. And as you said, let's jump directly into some live systems. I will share my screen. Right, and we will start in SAP Signavio Process Collaboration Hub. Right, it's our one-stop shop for process-related content, and there we have a couple of features to also manage business transformations. Right, and one part of this are objectives, as you can see here on the screen. So we do have on a company level a high-level objective to improve the operational speed and efficiency across the company. Right, and to achieve this objective, we have a couple of initiatives running. To look into this from a process perspective. So initiative is something like a project you typically manage within your enterprise, right? So let's look into analyze and improve claim management, right? So that's exactly the use case Evgeny just talked about. And let's look into this initiative, right? And in this initiative, we can capture different insights across our tooling, right? So we can capture process mining insights, benchmarking insights from our industry, right? You can think of it like snapshots from data, right? How processes run, KPIs, etc., to work upon them and to identify things which need to be improved. So we will capture those insights. I will show this to you in a second. We can calculate value cases. We can attach assets, and we can also track tasks to really make the initiative moving forward. As a first step, we see that one of our analysts created already an insight using our process mining tooling that the average cycle time is too high for the claim management process, right? So we should investigate this using our tooling and also at the end provide automation or even AI options to improve this. We see a certain level of business impact, some urgency, and the average cycle time was captured with more than 5 days, right? Which it took from the claim opening to the actual closing at the end. In order to investigate this further, let's close the side panel and open the assets part, right? And let's start with the process model, which also Evgeny talked about before. So we had this rough sequence of steps outlined in the PowerPoint slide, and that's the actual process model behind it, right? That was modeled either based on SAP best practices using AI. So we do have prompt to process model functionalities in Signavio, or manually or via images, so different capabilities. And this is the typical process, how the process should work in reality, right? That's done using our process modeling product within the Signavio suite, and we will come to that process later when we overlay the actual execution of the process in the real world. Let's move back to the initiative part because we have this task of analyzing this insight, right? That the average cycle time is too high. So let's put it in progress that we have the full visibility that someone is looking into that. And let's move to our process mining product to investigate this case further, right? So this opens our process intelligence product, and there we have a nice dashboard giving us at a glance some KPIs and some diagrams about how the claim management process is running. We see this average cycle time, so that's exactly the point where our colleague captured this insight, right? And this cycle time is far too high, we need to improve it. We see the max cycle time, so the edge cases, we see some charts about regions, about process variants, etc. And what we now want to do is better understand the process, right? And with this, we open our process discovery, which is the typical spaghetti diagram kind of thing you might be aware of using other process mining tools, right? So this shows the different steps a claim is taking throughout the process, reflected in the SAP S/4HANA system, which is in our demo use case, the single source of truth for this claim. So it gets submitted, there is some intake, some documentation review, some investigation, some back and forth, some adjustment, and an assessment whether it's then approved or rejected. And if it's approved, it's posted and closed, right? And you see some bigger errors. This is the happy path, where most cases follow along, right? But you also see some smaller errors, which are the edge cases and short tracks and local variants maybe, which are not compliant or might take a longer time to resolve. So this is one of the capabilities. The other thing is specifically looking into the variants, right? And there we see multiple variants, right, grouped by the number of cases. And the most cases follow this happy path, right? So it's very clear investigation, the claim is approved, it's posted and it's closed, right? No back and forth. That's the usual process, right? It takes a bit more than 3 days or 3 days and a half, right? But what's interesting is that whenever we look at the second most frequent variant, it jumps to more than a week cycle time, average cycle time. And this is because the customer is involved in that. So there is some additional information which is required. It's a back and forth, right? A typical ping pong, you might know, also interacting with claim departments, right? And this leads to an increase of the cycle time, right? And this we can analyze for different other variants. Last piece is looking at the process conformance, right? This is exactly where the process diagram we modeled, or I showed you in the first part of the demo, is coming up again, right? So we can overlay the actual execution of the process model against the desired process, and we can see if the paths are followed like design, right? And how much time the different tasks take, right? And if we look exactly at those variant again, we can see that the moment the customer is involved, the cycle time jumps to an average 5 days, which is a lot and a lot of room for improvement for our path forward, right? The second thing is that the decision to either approve or deny a claim takes 1 day, which is also quite a lot, right? And also the actual posting in the backend system takes almost 1 day, right? So this is something which we see from a mining perspective, right? But we don't know what's happening in those tasks. We don't know what the agent is doing while communicating with the customer. We don't know how the decision is taken, right? Is it an email thread which is going through the company to approve or deny, right? We also don't know how exactly the claim is posted. Is it done manually? Is it batch, etc., right? So that's something we need to investigate further. And that's why I also simply, as an analyst, create an insight here, right? Which says, okay, nice insights, but we need to investigate the user tasks, right? And that's exactly what we will do with KYP in a second, right? So I will attach this also to our initiative to have the umbrella around all that, right? And have the action here to please use KYP.ai for further insights. And what we expect is here a huge outcome on a business side because of automation potential, some level of urgency, right? And with that, I'm handing over to Piotr, and we will revisit this afterwards again to see the results.
Thank you. Thank you, Manuel. I will guide us through how we do it. So thank you so much for sharing the information on how the process, from the process perspective, the process logs is expected to work. Absolutely. This is something which is a necessity. This is understanding how a process is expected to be performed for designing, for modeling purposes. It is crucial. From our perspective, we help build the digital snapshot. So as we claim, we help in understanding how a user would perform a process. And we're talking not only about a user, we're talking about the whole team of users. We can create a digital snapshot of any individual, saying that obviously working within the scope of applications of interest to us, so as we call them productive applications, we can see exactly which steps are being taken by any individual. In that case, we're talking about the claims management. Those tiny little activities, those tasks which users perform, they would usually mean that there is a combined activity. At the process step level, we can see that there can be multiple activities underneath that if users are idle in application, if they are clicking through things in terms of any additional applications on any given day. Any process step might consist of multiple tiny little activities which simply build up on top of that. We use that navigating through the URLs, through the patterns, through original view names or application interfaces, basically to understand how a timeline of any individual is generated. Each of those users, obviously in general, in grouping, would help us analyze the sequence. So we can simply start with the discovery bit. So there is always option based on the patterns, based on the executions on a whole team level or on any individual level, but focusing on the team at the moment because this is what we are doing here. We want to focus on scale. So the platform will be able to identify most commonly occurring patterns for any individuals. We can see that for this process, yes, there will be a sequence which is quite often followed. There will be some loops within those, but in general, if we're looking from the user's perspective on how claim is being handled, there is always a way to understand exactly looking at the scale. So looking at, for example, in this case, there is 33 people performing those, and then there is a builder of the process. We can see how this sequence can be saved, for example, under a sequence 1. If we have a discovered sequence, we can always check the conformance. So the SOP might be generated, something we would expect to be performed. We can verify what's the conformance on that, on the investigation where the SOP was generated. We can see what was expected versus what the platform managed to measure. Those sequences from multiple individuals can be interpreted in a form of a process. So for us, when we create a sequence, we can run the check on the SAP, on the SOP, apologies, on the SOP, and basically looking at the average time on how the process was being executed, we can see that the variant would, or most commonly, would represent what was designed. So we know how a claim is expected to be processed. And usually every organization, every team heavily using or utilizing SAP tools or tool set would say that they are an SAP shop. So pretty much everything happens in an SAP. But what we try to uncover here is the other additional potential for improvements. We know there are some other steps which are unmeasurable within the SAP landscape. So looking at the categories of application and taking SAP out of the picture, we can say that there is a number of interactions that users would have in any given day on any given period with additional applications that would indicate that, yes, if there is an interaction, if there is a need to interact with someone, to fetch the information, to send an email, to wait for something on a process step, this is mostly where the delay is coming from. So from user perspective, we are able to measure that to see how much time people would spend in an Outlook or in any given other application, as we had in here, Nitro PDF, for reviewing the PDF files. Those can be also understood in terms of transactional volumes. So if we look for a business ID of a claim, something that can help us uniquely identify on a screen where a claim or when a claim is being processed, the platform is able to measure the cases which have uniquely been touched, so claims processed on a given day, or if users were working on more of those, the platform can measure that on any given day, a particular user was working on multiple cases. And with those activities, with those measurements, we can come up with the bottlenecks, with frictions in a process, with outcomes, with KPIs like the claim processing simply, or the average handling time. The process discovery layer is quite important as we uncover how the process looks, but what we were focusing on, or what we want to focus on in this demo, is that we are looking for an investigation which takes more time than expected. So we are focusing on a particular sequence which contains the SAP investigation, and we want to add additional applications to that. So we want to focus on the PDF and Outlook, which are quite common. Let's look for the occurrences descending. So let's look at the variants, which are most commonly observed. And we see that the claim investigation running the conformance check also, but we can see how the claim investigation looks from the perspective of a user. So there is a number of steps that interact with each other. And that's always interesting to verify. It's always crucial to understand the data. The platform is, or can be, measuring or providing a lot of entry points for any given individual. We would say it's 37,000 entry points of data for any given individual per day. So basically, it's a large number of data to process. What we added on top of the data is what we call KYP.ai concierge. So the concierge is an LLM built on top of the data which resides in a platform, we work on the aggregated information. So we work on the aggregates available in the platform. The aggregated information can be easily interpreted by a concierge, saying here that if I want to ask a question, this is an LLM, I can simply ask it anything, but the concierge will come up with so-called pathways, so something which can help us steer the conversation in any given direction. In that case, we are looking for improvements. We're looking for automation. So the key insights which concierge is able to provide is that across the platform, we know what's the active time, passive time, automation potential. Basically, we are measuring the inefficiencies. We're looking for a place where time is leaked, where time is spent, yet not necessarily supposed to. On that, the concierge can come up with the automation opportunities by default, looking at the candidates, looking at the improvements, but also we want to estimate what's the general automatability of that process. So what is the potential if we were to eliminate, to streamline that process? The concierge took a couple of steps. So looking at the variants included, we have the steps which users would most commonly take, and then each of those steps might be assessed, and on a particular scale, we can move the conversation further. Again, this is an LLM. It is an interface. So asking at the potential, there are some rules which we can apply. It came up with the automation potential on the APS scale, which is amazing, because this is something we want to, or we may focus on. We see what steps users take. The platform also provides an enhanced view on any activity that users were performing. So we know there is a commotion around the SAP investigation step, as we call it, for the claims investigation. So alternatively, we also see that users would spend a lot of time on checking the claim. So verifying for any given individual in this time frame might be time consuming, might be a sync simply which we want to eliminate. There's also a couple of hours spent by any given user on the interaction with any external information provider via Outlook, as we did measure those applications. We are application agnostic, so those applications simply represent an Outlook, but if there is any other communication tool used, that is also within the scope. We asked it to the concierge, we asked it to calculate the ease of automation for that process, because we had the general overview, we validated the steps. We wanted to provide the score, and looking at the scores, it seems that from that perspective, it would be quite easy to recommend something on the combined steps. So the path which is suggested at the moment is that I want it to simply create instructions. If I were to automate this, and yes, we focus on the SAP Build at the moment, so I have been instructed to use a couple of specific words which are easy to represent and easy to comprehend by the tool. So we would be looking for the words like automation, task, and approval whenever they are applicable. So with the closing remarks, we see that this is actually a good candidate, and the concierge came up with the steps. So there is a couple of steps, 8, I guess, which we could simply take as an input prompt for Yevgeny to start doing his magic. So there is an interface where I can simply click and copy anything to a clipboard. I can paste it, but luckily, I hope Yevgeny will also have access to this information. So over to you, Yevgeny, with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Piotr. I think it was super interesting to see how we really bring it to the last point. Now, what do we do next, right? Let me share my screen, and let me also show you how do we implement this on the build side. So again, you should be able to see my screen now, right? And now we are in the SAP Build lobby, and this is where I actually start my development, be it an application or a process or a Joule skill. And then I can also see some items on the left, which we will not use now, but then it leads us to the pre-built content store, to the monitoring capabilities, and etc. So what is it that I want to do now, right? So I have the prompt from Piotr, and I want to use this prompt to create my process flow. So I go ahead and click on create here, and then I select that I want to create a process automation scenario. So I will give it a name. I will call it claims processing demo scenario, and then here I will say, so just a short description, process to streamline claims processing for SAP S4 HANA, right? And then I click create, and the system will open the new process editor space for me where I can develop it in different forms. And in this case, which is very handy, I don't need to create it manually. I can use this. Obviously, I still can create manually another process, right? And then you see there are different types of artifacts that we can create, be it form, process, action, so API call, decision, and etc. However, now I don't need it. I will just click on the generate button, and then here you see I can go ahead and generate straight away the process form or then another types of artifacts. Now I'm looking for the process. And what I can do, I can insert the prompt that Piotr has shared with me, right? List in the steps that we want now to automate. So after this, I will just click on create, and we need to give system just a bit of time to generate it for us. What's important is that you remember that Piotr also said about the specific words, right, and key phrases that we need to use, right? So when we create the process flow, we need to be quite specific. Yeah, so we want to tell the system, hey, create an automation, create an action, because those are different types of artifacts that you can actually see on the screen now. So if I make it bigger, yeah, you can see that we have created 3 automations to review the missing claims information, to request the missing information from the customer, and then receive and extract the information. Why are we using RPA bots here? Because in this case, we are interacting also with certain desktop tools, right? So meaning that we request the information, say, through the email, right? Or we review the information in the PDF. And you remember also in Piotr's diagram, we had, say, the PDF tool that the customers are using. However, what is important to outline is that while the system created the skeleton of this process steps, the automations here in this case are empty. So we still need to fill them in with certain steps. However, if we look into some other activities, right? So not all of them are placeholders, right? So then you can see the forms, you can see the notifications, and then in the form we can see that, what happens after we finalize the claims assessment. So do we approve it? Do we reject it? Do we just submit it? And we can still adjust the flow that we have here. So how do we actually do this? How do we manually interact with the system here? So I wanted to show you on this very simple example because we don't have a lot of time. So we have a step to notify the processor that he or she are assigned to assess the received information for the claim. Yeah. So what I can do now, I can say, please review the claim. Yeah. However, I do not have any variable to link to the claim, right? So for now, I will click apply, and then I will go here. And then here you can see in the overall process description, we can interact with the variables. And here I can say that we have a new process input. Yeah, that is the claim ID. Yeah, in this case, we will actually receive the claim ID at a later stage. You will see this just in a few minutes. So I will say we are creating the claim ID, and we can describe it as ID of the claim submitted. Yeah. And then obviously, because it's an ID, we want to say it's a number, obviously can be another data type. And that's required, right, for us to execute it. So now, once it is created, we will see it now here. Then we can obviously configure process outputs, custom variables as well to use throughout the process. But if I go back now into this notification form, we can see, please review the claim. And then now we have the option to select the claim ID. Yeah, so this is how easy you can incorporate variables or inputs or outputs in order to interact with them throughout the process. Obviously, there is a way to do the formatting and so on. We don't really want to do that now, right? And then the same thing, we can go into the form, and in the form we can also ask it to generate certain fields, right, instead of drag and dropping them. So it's also very, very handy to use the generative AI capabilities that we call Joule for developers in SAP Build to help you to define, in this case, the skeleton of the process instead of thinking, hey, which steps do I use and what do I need to do and what is the type of the step, right? So KYP really helps us now to define what is it that we actually need to do in order to address it. Then, obviously, it is connected to certain activities in order to really properly define this flow, in order to execute it accordingly, right? And then we still can adjust it. We can add some additional steps manually as well, right? For example, we don't have an approval determination step, then we can easily add a decision, right? By this activity. However, what I wanted to show you now, right, is that after we have worked with all the steps, after we have defined it all, and then all the exclamation marks will be gone, because here in this case, for example, the system is acting up a little bit. Why it gives us this exclamation mark? So you can see that we have. So what we have here is called finalized claims payment process, meaning that in this case we post the data of the claim to the S4HANA. In this case, you see it's not marked as a bot, it's marked as an action because we don't interact with some desktop tools. We have an API to access, and then we can just call this API. However, in order to call this API, obviously we need to also define what we call destination variable. So here it is something you manage actually on the BTP side of things. So for this, you can just have a variable called SAP S4 HANA, right? And then that would be the variable that you will be using in order to submit the data to the system. So because once we will release and deploy the project, it will ask you which destination, so which basically API endpoint do we want to connect this variable to. Yeah. So just now, to be mindful of the time, I will jump actually into the lobby again, right? And then in the lobby, you can see that we have the skill, right? Or we can create a new skill as well here for Joule. So once I will finalize all the changes and define all the inputs, outputs, and make sure that my process is set, yeah, I can actually create a skill. Yeah, so what is a skill? And in fact, what's very important here, you see, we don't really have a trigger, and it's on purpose because normally when you run a process, you might want to have various types of triggers. Yeah, so just back to the process for a second. You can submit a form, you can create an API trigger, you can wait for an event that happens in various systems, or you can also have a scheduled trigger to run your process or automation. However, when we talk about Joule, and deploying this process later to be used in the conversational format from Joule, we don't need to define the trigger. That's why I'm missing this part on purpose, right? So we don't really define any trigger here. And with that, I actually will go now to the skill that we have defined here with the Joule Studio already. And in the skill, we can actually select various type of tools, let's say. Yeah. So when we create the skill, it's also very important. Yeah, maybe I will open it. So you see it's a different marking from the UI side, right? So you can see that we are creating a skill for Joule. Yeah. And what is important here is that you can see that when I created it, I created a very precise description what it does, right? So unlike when we just work with the process automation here in Joule Studio, we need to be very descriptive. So it's a skill to invoke process for claim submission and approval, confirming the claims data has been submitted with a unique ID. Yeah. And in this case, I can then use various types of artifacts here throughout the process flow. You will see that we actually have different artifacts, right? And one of them is run a process. And you remember we defined a process on the previous step. Now, obviously, we don't have time to fill on all the inputs and outputs and then fill in the automations. However, then here you can see I have an existing working process, claims processing flow, which we just added here after the Joule trigger. And then what I also did is I created here a message to define the user interaction And here you can see that we can define also, obviously, what the user will see in the chat when we are requesting the claims to be posted. Yeah. And then I use, obviously, again, the same claim ID with a certain syntaxes as well. Yeah. Now you see it's a pretty straightforward skill in this case, right? So we just deployed or embedded the process in to be triggered by or through Joule. In this case, I can now release it. Yeah, so there is a certain version management here. So I will say, yeah, release as a patch because we have not really changed too much now. And then so basically when release it, it is the same life cycle for the process automation. We make the process read-only or the skill read-only, so no one can really change it or amend it. Now, if I will go ahead, I click deploy, and then here for the deployment part, I can select my environment that I have defined previously for this. Yeah. And then I click on upgrade because we already had it deployed to this environment. And after it will take just a bit of time to deploy it, we can really go to the environment and see this. So for that, I will just stop sharing for a second in order to open it and not show some personal data of my colleagues because you will see their emails if I will keep sharing. So yeah, basically I will show it to you now in a second. Yeah. And yeah, I will now reshare my screen. So yeah, we are back. Yeah, so you remember we saw this control tower in here. In the control tower, we can access various environments. And in this case, we are accessing this claims processing environment that we deployed the project to. So you see there is a version 103, exactly the one that I now deployed. And then we have a lot of options related to the environment management and then certain keys, variables, etc. What we are looking for now, though, is Joule. Yeah, so that's our testing opportunity, which we can just launch from here in order to interact with Joule and basically ask it to process a claim. Yeah, so what I will do now, you see I have the previous expired conversation here. I will create a new conversation and I will now ask the system to start processing. Previously it was claim 3, now start processing of claim number 4 and inform me once it is executed. So once I've done it, we will receive now a message that the data is posted and the claim is successfully posted to the SAP S/4HANA. Yeah. So that is our information message. You remember that we defined. We can also turn it off just to have one, right? But overall, we have been informed by Joule that the claim is now processed and posted to the system after we did the previous steps. So with that, we conclude with the executionable part of the demo, right? So what we saw is that we can define the process based on the prompt generated by KYP.ai, which makes it very easy for us to really kickstart our automation development. And then we can proceed with either using it as a classical process, or we can really deploy it to be used in a conversational format through Joule, SAP's generative AI copilot. With that, what's important for us and what's remaining is to actually see the improvements that we have potentially achieved with this implementation. So with that, I will stop sharing and pass it back to Manuel in order to inform us about this.
Yes, so thanks, Evgeny. Great to see how fast you can turn an actual insight into an automation or even an AI capability, right? And now we do some time traveling. So imagine we deployed this Joule skill, we deployed automation, and now we really want to see after 6 months or a couple of weeks, how much value did we realize? So how did the cycle time drop at the end according to this automation, right? So we'll start again at the initiative level. So we had to look into the average cycle time using Signavio. We had to look into the user level tasks and had some findings there using KYP.ai and had a SAP Build providing in the automation capabilities. What we now want to do is to really look at the data, right? So with that, let's quickly move back to the dashboard, right? And what we can see here is that indeed the cycle time dropped from the 5.5 days to 2 days and 10 hours after we deployed the automation, right? That's really great to see. And we would like to capture this also as an insight, as a proof point in our initiative to really show that we had a right bet, right? And we definitely created some value with those automations, right? So let's capture this average cycle time dropped, right? Assign this to our initiative to close the loop fully. And this had for sure business impact and was also kind of urgent. What we can also see is when we look at the process conformance part, right? Again, at a task level. Let me close the window on the side briefly. So we also can see that the back and forth with the customer dropped from 5 days to not even 1 day with the improvements we made with the automatic emails, etc. The assessment whether to approve or deny dropped to 5 hours because we have this approval workflow as part of SAP Build, and with the Joule skill and the automation via the APIs in S/4HANA, we could even do the claim posting faster in 12 hours, right? And this concludes more or less the demo part, right? So moving again back to the initiative, we can see that we have all the insights there. We can also resolve the last one and conclude the initiative, which played into the high-level objective on a company level. And with that, let me quickly go back to the slides to wrap it up. So looking at the demo, right, we saw that we can use SAP Signavio to manage a business transformation from A to Z, right, and analyze the process from an end-to-end perspective. We use KYP.ai to capture task-level data, find automation potential, and crafting a prompt, which we can then use in SAP Build to design and run an automation.
Manuel, I think we still see the demo slide, so maybe it's not updated for me.
Yeah, okay, no, it was fine, right? Again, my next sentence would have been to move to this slide, right? To conclude the summary.
Sorry.
Right, no worries. So just to summarize it up, right? So what you saw is on a process level that we improved the claim handling process, right? So we increased speed, we removed some manual tasks, right? And combining the 3 tools you saw today, Signavio, KYP, and SAP Build, this allows you to really run a business transformation end to end, right? And really back it with data. So no guessing around, but really have the data at hand to prioritize and do it faster. We can continuously identify and fix process weaknesses, right? Discover different variants and also fix non-compliance variants. And at the end, reduce manual work, right? And redirect our resources to more value generating tasks. And this concludes our demo and session today. So thanks from Signavio side, from SAP Build side, and KYP side. And with this, back to you, Daniel, to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Hey, great. And thank you so much for the session. I have one more question before we end for today. Is there some resources for our watchers and viewers to learn more about this, try it out, read into it?
Yeah, well, in fact, as you see, that's free separate solutions that we are bringing closer together, right? And it's very important that obviously we understand how they work individually. What we plan to work on together with Piotr, with Manuel further, is to release a blog post on the SAP community, really outlining this scenario and maybe shedding more light on how you can do this yourself. And we will also list some helpful materials, I think, in the chat as soon as we finish this live stream, for the individual products that are available right now.
Perfect. Of course, we will link all those links down in the comment section as well as in the events page on the community. And we're looking forward to the blog post. And thanks again for this great session. Really informative, was really interesting. And if you have no final words, I would say thank you all for watching and end the session now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for this great session.